Hisashi Ouchi, the man who shouldn't have survived. In the quiet town of Tokaimura, Japan, on the morning of September the 30th, 1999, everything seemed normal. Technicians moved through corridors, coffee machines hummed softly, and paperwork shuffled under the fluorescence of a regular shift at the JCO nuclear fuel processing plant. But within moments, that silence was shattered, not by an explosion, not by fire, but by an invisible, lethal force, radiation. And in the center of it all stood Hisashi Ouchi, a man whose body would become the battleground between science and mortality, and whose suffering would redefine the limits of human endurance. This is not just a story, it is a tragedy that defies belief, a moment of human error that spiraled into the unimaginable. This is the haunting, heartbreaking, and deeply disturbing story. The man who suffered one of the worst radiation exposures in human history and lived far beyond what nature intended. A name the world may forget, but a story it never should. The accident that never should have happened. Hisashi Ouchi was a 35-year-old technician, a father and husband, working at the JCO plant alongside two colleagues. That day, the three men were tasked with preparing fuel for a fast breeder reactor, a process they had done many times before. But there was a problem. Shortcuts had become routine. Instead of using specialized equipment to carefully handle uranium, the team manually mixed the solution in stainless steel buckets, a practice never approved by safety standards. Ouchi held the funnel. His co-worker poured, and at 10:35 a.m., as the enriched uranium passed the critical mass, the unthinkable happened. A bright blue flash of Cherenkov radiation filled the room. It lasted only an instant, but in that moment, Ouchi absorbed the highest dose of radiation ever recorded in a human being, over 17 Sieverts. For context, 8 Sieverts is usually fatal. He collapsed immediately, gripping his head, screaming in pain. The blue light had not only signaled disaster, it had burned through his chromosomes, ripped apart his DNA. One technician ran for help. Another stood frozen, unable to process the horror unraveling in front of him. Ouchi's body began to fail almost instantly. Vomiting, confusion, loss of consciousness. He was dying, but his heart still beat, and so began a medical ordeal the world had never seen. The moment everything changed. Hisashi Ouchi was closest to the tank when it happened. The flash lasted only milliseconds, but the damage? Unimaginable. Radiation doesn't burn like fire. It tears you apart on the cellular level. It shreds your DNA, kills your immune system, and melts your organs from within. And Hisashi took the brunt of it. In less than a second, he absorbed 17 Sieverts of radiation. To put it into perspective, 8 Sieverts is enough to kill a human within hours. Hisashi had over twice that amount. His body instantly betrayed him, his hands trembled, his skin flushed ghost white, and a warm stream of blood began trickling from his nose. He gasped for air, but nothing felt real. The room spun, his insides twisted with a heat no human was ever meant to feel. One moment, he was a technician focused on his work. The next, he was ground zero, one of the most horrific radiation accidents in history. The pain came quickly, an aching, crushing sensation that no painkiller on earth could numb. Inside his cells, the destruction had already begun. And though he didn't know it yet, Hisashi Ouchi had just entered a living death. One that would last 83 unimaginable days. The body begins to disappear. When Hisashi was taken to the University of Tokyo hospital, doctors were stunned. He looked normal at first glance. No major external injuries, no burns. But inside, his chromosomes were shattered. His white blood cell count was 0. His internal organs were disintegrating. His body was no longer capable of healing. Soon his skin began to peel off in sheets. His muscles liquefied. He began bleeding from every opening, eyes, nose, gums. Every attempt to stop it failed. And yet, he was alive. The machine said he was breathing. But what lay on that hospital bed was no longer human in the way we understand it. Nurses wept as they changed his dressings, knowing it was agony just to touch him. One doctor whispered, "His body has already died. His soul just hasn't left yet." Still, the orders came. Keep him alive, no matter what, even if it meant dragging him through hell 1 hour at a time. A father, a husband, a human being. Hisashi Ouchi wasn't just a victim of science gone wrong. He was a man with a life. He was only 35 years old. A father, a husband, a man who had simply gone to work that morning, expecting to come home. His family was devastated, helpless as they watched him deteriorate. His wife held his hand even as it blistered beyond recognition. His son was too young to understand, but old enough to know something was wrong. Hisashi himself was conscious, at least in the beginning. He cried, he begged, "Please, let me die." But that was never the plan, suspended between life and death. Japan had never faced a case like this before. The medical team, driven by duty and the pressure of national interest, decided to keep him alive at all costs. They performed experimental treatments, blood transfusions, stem cell injections, skin grafts. They brought in specialists from all over the country. Every time his body failed, machines took over. He stopped breathing. A ventilator stepped in. His kidneys shut down. Dialysis replaced them. His heart fluttered. They revived him, again and again. For 83 days, they kept Hisashi Ouchi alive, not living, existing. The controversy, ethics under the microscope. As the days passed, so did the public's sympathy, replaced by outrage. Why was this man being kept alive when it was clear his body had given up? Was it for science? For national pride? For medicine's curiosity? Many believed Hisashi was being tortured by care, that he had become a living experiment, his agony prolonged not out of mercy, but out of ambition. He had stopped responding, his eyes no longer open. He was unconscious, yet still breathing through tubes, his body barely intact. Some doctors admitted, "We didn't want him to become a first, but we didn't know how to let go." The last farewell. On December 21st, 1999, after nearly 3 months of suffering, Hisashi Ouchi's body finally gave out. His heart stopped for the final time, and this time, they let it. He died surrounded by machines, nurses, and silence. But more importantly, he died after an ordeal that should never have happened. His death wasn't just a tragedy, it was a warning. The aftermath, a country in shock. The Tokaimura disaster forced Japan to confront its nuclear practices. An investigation revealed massive negligence. Training was inadequate. Safety rules had been ignored. The company had cut corners, knowingly. JCO, the company operating the facility, was shut down. Executives were charged. New laws were passed. But for Hisashi's family, no legislation could fill the void he left behind. His son would grow up with only memories and photographs. His wife, once filled with hope, had been turned into a widow by recklessness and delay, remembering Hisashi Ouchi. Today, Hisashi Ouchi is both a symbol of suffering and a silent hero. Not because he fought in war, not because he saved lives, but because his body became the battleground of ignorance and ambition. We remember him not just to mourn, but to remind that one mistake in science can echo through 1,000 lives, that safety must always outweigh speed, that no experiment is worth the cost of humanity. The ghost of Tokaimura. Hisashi Ouchi never meant to be famous. He didn't choose to become history, but his story endures, etched into medical textbooks, whispered in hospitals, feared by nuclear workers. His final wish was a simple one, to be let go. But the world kept him hanging between life and death for reasons beyond his control. In the end, it wasn't radiation that killed him. It was our inability to say goodbye. Fade out. Silence. Then a whisper. "Please, let me die." Was it compassion or cruelty in the name of science? To this day, the case of Hisashi Ouchi is debated by doctors, ethicists, and the haunted few who were there. His story isn't just about radiation. It's about the limits of pain and the silence that follows a scream no one can answer. Like, share, subscribe, and ask yourself, when does saving a life become stealing a soul?